Good morning, students. Today we'll start with a new chapter, that is from part A, that is electric charges and fields. Right. So for board exam from this chapter we have 8 marks. So from the 8 marks, one question will come from 1 marks and one question from 2 marks and one question from 5 marks. So in this 5 marks, either it may be theory or they may ask this in is in numericals, right? So otherwise they will ask in case one question for 3 marks, that is 5 plus 3, 8, or they may ask one question in 1 marks, one question in 2 marks and one question in 5 marks. So either they may ask in theory or they may ask in problem, right? So starts with electrostatics, right? So first we have to know what is static, then electrostatic. So static is nothing but at rest. That means anything which do not move. That means it will not change with respect to time. So that one we call as static. Then electron means charges, right? So that means what is electrostatic? So electrostatic is a branch of physics. So here we are going to study charges at rest. That means we are going to study the charges at rest, or we may study the static charges. That means this is the branch. So in this branch we are going to study the charges when the charges is at rest. So that one we call as electrostatic, right? So here we have study. So what we are going to study about the charges when these charges are at rest. So that means we are going to study the forces, next field, and next potential, right? So we are going to study these factors. That means we are going to study forces, that is due to the static charges, field, that is due to the static charges, and potential, that is due to the static charge. That means we are going to study the forces, field, and potential when the charges is at rest, right? So what is electrostatic? Electrostatic is a branch of physics which deals with the study of charges at rest. So here what we are going to study means we are going to study the terms, that is forces, that is the electric force, and field, that is the electric field, and the potential, that is electric potential. So these three we are going to study when the charges is at rest. So in this chapter we are going to focus on the forces and field, and in the second chapter it is continued. So there we are going to study the potential, right? So before going to study these terms, that is forces, fields, and potential, that is due to electric charges, first we have to know the what are charges, right? So the charges are first discovered in around 600 BC, right, by Thales of Miletus, right? So he is a philosopher. He discovered the charges in 600 BC. That is when amber is rubbed with silk or wool cloth. So this amber attracts lighter objects, right? So the charges are first discovered by the Thales of Miletus. So in 600 BC. So how we discovered means when amber is rubbed with silk. So amber is one type of material. He rubbed with the silk or wool cloth. So this amber attracts the lighter object, right? So by this way he found the charges. That means he discovered the charges, right? So then what are charges? How we define charges, right? So if we know first what are charges, then we are going to study what are forces, how they behave, and next field, what is field and how they are produced by these charges, right? So what are charges? So charges are something associated with matter, right? So charges are something which associated with matter due to which it produces and experiences electric field and magnetic field, right? So this one is the definition of the charge, right? So charge, or we call this one as electric charge, right? So simply we call this one as charge. So what is charge? So charge is something, we don't know what it is, right? So we define charge is something, it has associated with the matter. So matter is anything which has mass, right? So charges are something which associated with the matter, right? So due to this it produces and experiences, right? So these charges are producers and it experiences the electric field and magnetic field, right? So this one we call as electric charge, or simply we call this one as the charge, right? So what is charge? Charge is something associated with the matter due to which it experiences and it produces the electric field and magnetic field. So by this way we are going to define the electric charge, right? So electric charge is denoted by Q. Either it may be capital Q or it may be small q, right? So charges we are going to denote it by Q, right? So charge, it is a scalar quantity. That means it has only the magnitude, but it don't have any direction, right? So charge is a scalar quantity. Next, SI unit of charge, right? So SI unit of charge is coulomb. So it is denoted by C, right? So this is about the charge, definition of the charge. Next, it is denoted by Q and it is a scalar quantity, and SI unit of the charge is coulomb, right? So what is charge? Charge is something associated with the matter due to it experiences and it produces the electric field and magnetic field, right? So it is denoted by Q. Either we can denote this one in capital Q or we can denote this one in small q, right? So the important is it is a scalar quantity. That means it has only the magnitude, right? So the next is the of the charge is coulomb, right? So next, when a glass bag is rubbed with silk cloth or wool cloth, right? So first discovered is amber is rubbed with silk or wool, right? So here taking one glass rod, it is rubbed with the silk cloth or wool cloth, right? So if we consider this one as silk cloth, right? So this one, glass rod, right? So this one is glass rod is of different material and silk cloth is also the different material. Right? So when glass rod is rubbed with the silk cloth, so glass rod acquires one kind of charge. Right? So when glass rod rubbed with this silk cloth, so this glass rod acquires one kind of charge and this silk cloth acquires second kind of charge. So that means when we rub any two materials, then one object will acquire any one kind of charge and the another material will acquire the other kind of the charge, right? So the property which differentiate these charges, right? So this is one kind of charge and here we have the second kind of charge. That means the property which differentiate the kinds of charges, so that one we call as polarity of charges. So what is polarity of charges? So polarity of the charges is the property which differentiate the two kinds of the charges, right? So that property we call as polarity of the charges. So this is true for any pair of media. Right? So that means if we rub any two materials, then one material acquire one kind of charge and another material acquire another kind of charge. This one is true for any given two pair of media. Pair means two, right? So this is true for any pair of media. That is when plastic rod is rubbed with cat fur. Right? So here plastic rod acquires one kind of charge and cat fur will acquire the another kind of charge. Right? So these two kinds of the charges is named as positive charge and negative charge by Benjamin Franklin. Right? So first discovery of the charges is by the Thales of Miletus, right? So the name is given to the two kinds of charges, that is two different kinds of the charges. So naming that one as one is positive charge and another one is negative charge, right? So these two charges is named by the English scientist. So who is that one is? That is the Benjamin Franklin. So Benjamin Franklin named the two kinds of charges by positive charge and negative charge. So next, so from convenient, right? So for convenient, so here glass rod will acquire positive charge. The charges on the glass rod is considered as positive. That means taken as positive, and the second kind of charge that is on the silk, it acquires the negative charge, right? So this is by the convenient. Initially we don't know what type of charges will be on the glass rod and on the silk, right? After naming by the Benjamin Franklin, that is positive and negative charge. So by the convenient we are considered that the glass rod will acquire positive charge and the silk cloth will acquire the negative charge. So in the similar place here the plastic rod will acquire negative charge and the cat fur will acquire positive charge, right? So this is by the convenient, as they initially named that one as positive. So here we are going to study in the glass rod will acquire the positive charge, right? So next, when so here we have one glass rod. So taken another glass rod, right? So this is also the glass rod. When these two glass rods are rubbed with the silk cloth. That means this glass rod also gets positive charge, right? So when we place these two glass rods, that is positively charged glass rods, nearer to each other, so considering here is one glass rod and here is the another glass rod. So here it is positive. So wherever we are rubbed, so that part only it is charged, right? So remaining part will be remains same. So as we place these two glass rods nearer to each other, so they will move away from one another. That means they will repel each other, right? So from this observation, we say that like charges repel each other, right? So in the same way, when we put this glass rod towards this silk block, so these two are attracted each other. So that means opposite charges attracts each other, right? So this is from the observation. So the first observation we did is when any two materials we rub each other, one material will acquire one kind of charge and another material will acquire another kind of charge. So these two kinds of charges is given by the polarity of charges. That is, polarity of the charges is the property which differentiates the two kinds of charges. So either it is positive charge or it is negative charge, right? So that positive charge and negative charge is named by the Benjamin Franklin, right? So when two similar blocks are rubbed with the silk, it acquires, the glass rod acquires positive charges. When we place close to each other, they will repel each other. That means these two glass rods are move away from one another. So from this observation, we say that like charges are repulse each other, right? The same charged glass rod is placed near the silk cloth, so it will attract each other. So we say that opposite charges are attract each other because silk cloth have negative charge and the glass rod is positive charge. So these two are opposite, right? So from that we say that opposite charges are attract each other, right? Next, when we say that, so if we have any one material or any object or any body is there, when we say that this object is electrified, right? So if any object possesses the electrical charges, then that body we say that it is electrified. Possesses means if this object either it has positive charge or it has negative charge. How we measure, how we say that this object is charged? So how we find this object consists of the charges? So that one we have the simple apparatus. So that apparatus is the gold leaf electroscope. So what is gold leaf electroscope? It is an apparatus used to detect the electric charge. So gold leaf electroscope is an apparatus. So that one is used to detect the electric charge. So by this we can say the object is electrified or the object is neutral, right? So what is gold leaf electroscope, right? So in gold leaf electroscope, a vertical metal rod, right? So this one is the vertical metal rod having the knob is placed inside the box, right? So this one is the box. So this one is vertical metal rod, right? So at the bottom it is planted with the two gold leaves. So these are the two gold leaves, right? So this is about the simple gold leaf electroscope. Now, when a charged body, so this one is considering this one as a charged glass rod, right? So it is positively charged, right? So when this positively charged object, any object made to keep in touch with the knob of the vertical metal rod. So this charged body is made in touch with the metal knob, then the charges will flow across this. That means it is flow along the vertical rod and then to the leaves, right? So it is equally distributed on both the leaves. That means the charges which are present on the rod. So this one is taken as glass rod. So it is positively charged. So this positively charged glass rod is made in contact with the metal knob. Now the charges which are present on the metal, that is in the glass rod, is transferred to the gold leaves through the vertical metal rod, right? So now if you observe here, these two leaves having the positive charges, right? That is equal number of the positive charges. So from the property, that is what happens, like charges will repel each other. So repel means these two are moving away from one another, right? So these two will move away from each other, right? So here forming an angle, right? So this one is the separation, that is angle of separation, right? So this angle of separation gives the charges which are present in the glass rod, right? So this is the divergence or angle of separation. So this one we call as angle of divergence. So angle of divergence gives the number of charges which are present in the glass rod, right? So if angle of separation is more, then more number of charges are present in this glass rod. So if there is no changes in the gold leaves, means this body is neutral because there is no flow of charges to the gold leaves, right? So if there is a chance of flowing of the charges, then only these two will diverge to one another. So otherwise they will remain same, right? So this theta gives the measure of the charges on the object, either that is any object. So here we are taken as glass rod. So this degree of divergence gives the charges on the glass rod, right? So this is about the gold leaf electroscope. So gold leaf electroscope is an apparatus used to measure the charges or used to detect the charges on a given body, right? So next, so how the object get electrified, right? So if we consider this one is the neutral body, right? So this is the solid, right? So solid consists of atoms, right? So solid is made up of what? Atoms. So atoms consist of the electrons, right? Solid or any object, right? So this solid consists of what? Atoms. So atoms consist of the electrons. So in solids, so certain electrons are loosely bounded with the atom, right? So out of all these atoms, so certain atoms, in those atoms the electrons are loosely bound with the atom, right? So these electrons are responsible for the charges, right? So these are easily move away from that is outside. When the objects are get rubbed with the another object, so these are responsible for getting charges, that means electrified, right? So if any object loses its electrons, right? So if any object loses its electron, then that object is positively charged. So any object which loses its electron, then the object is positively charged. So if any object gains the electrons, right? So if any object gains the electron, then that object is negatively charged, right? So that means these are the two different materials. When we rub these two different materials, that means this object has a tendency, that means loosely bounded electrons which are presented in this solid. These electrons are easily transferred from one object to another object. That means the electrons are easily moved. Then electrons are losing by this object, hence it gets positively charged. That means in the example we have glass rod, right? So glass rod is positively charged because it loses its electrons when it rubbed with the wool or silk cloth. So if you consider this one as silk cloth, right? So this silk cloth gains the electron from the glass rod. Electron is nothing but negative charge, right? So hence the silk cloth is negatively charged, right? So the number of electrons which are transferring from one object to the another object is very less than total number of electrons present in the object, right? So only few numbers. For example, here we have some 1000 number of electrons are present in this object. Only few. That means only 2 to 5 electrons are transferring from one object to the another object. So if we compare these two, so 2 is very less than the total number of the electrons which are present in the object, right? So this one is to remember. The number of electrons which are transferring from one object to another object is very less than to the total number of the electrons which are present in that object, right? So this is about the charges, right? So from this we define what are charges, then unit of the charge, it is a scalar quantity and its unit is coulomb, right? So next is how they are get charged. So they are naming as positive charge and negative charge, right? So like charges repel each other and unlike charges attract each other, right? So in the next class we will discuss, that is, methods of charging and properties of charges. So now here we discuss only the two properties. So remaining 3 to 4 properties we have. So that will be discussed in our next class. Right? Thank you.